Today's Japanese slang term is mecha mecha shi, and I found this term in my favorite way, which is just out in the wild, because I was reading a manga and it came up in a panel. This word is an e-adjective, and it's very, very simple to use because it just means that something has a kind of mechanical vibe to it, or a mechanical feel to it. Potentially steampunky, as you can see in this example here, but really there's no one genre or style which can claim mecha mecha shi as like its own thing, because you can just have like a ceiling or roof that's kind of mecha mecha shi. And a mech can also be mecha mecha shi, which is not surprising. If Gundams are not considered mechs for some nerdy reason, I'm sorry, I don't know. And like a time travel device that is shaped like a car from a classic film can also be mecha mecha shi if it is not car looking but more mechanical looking. Now, interestingly though, mecha mecha shi does appear in a number of English to Japanese dictionaries. Jisho.org has a definition for it, as does Japandict, but I'd still say it is kind of slang because oddly enough, major Japanese dictionaries online don't seem to have anything about it. Like the Japanese Wiktionary doesn't have an entry, which really surprised me. And while Weblio recognizes mecha as like a shortening of mechanical or mechanism, it does not recognize mecha mecha shi as a word, even though it does search a number of slang dictionaries. It is also absent from the 2-channel dictionary and this more recent otaku dictionary, which surprised me as well. Not just because I think mecha mecha shi is very, very straightforward, but also because it's one of the oldest slang terms I've covered on this channel. Like, here's a website from 1997 that uses mecha mecha shi to refer to the curves of a car. Look at how mechanical those curves are. And Google Books produces 3 hits for mecha mecha shi going back to the 1980s. They only provide snippet views, so I can't actually like look at the text and confirm for sure. But honestly, I would not be surprised at all if mecha mecha shi comes from the 1980s or even earlier. And the reason why is that generally speaking, according to the Japanese internet, mecha mecha shi is actually the second step in an evolution, with mecha being borrowed to mean mechanical, as we saw earlier in the Weblio definition, but then first being changed into an adjective or other form via the phrase mekateki, or like mechanical-ish, mechanical-esque. And this unquestionably dates back to at least 4 or 5 decades ago, as here, for instance, we can see a Mitsubishi manual from 1989 that uses the phrase to talk about mekateki na toraburu, so problems that are mechanical in nature of some kind. And I also found a report from the Kokuritsu Kokugo Kenkyujo, which is like the national language group people. I don't remember what it's called in English, but it goes back to 1973, and yeah, I found the real text of it, it's real, and you can see it refer to a mekateki na problem, mondai, in a broader discussion of newspaper-related vocabulary. Linguists study weird stuff. And in fact, Google Hits has hits for mekateki going back to the 1950s, although again, I can't actually access any of these texts. So if mekateki started, say, 1950, 1960 or so, and then evolved into mecha mecha shi by like 1970s, at least early 1980s, that would not surprise me at all. Although again, it does surprise me that dictionaries aren't picking up on it. Like, it's not in my Kojien, although this is an older version that was published in the 1980s. Or maybe just a word like mecha mecha shi does not belong in a garden of words. Maybe it's in the new version. I can't afford it. Anyway, just to wrap all this up, I should note that the Nico Nicopedia page for mecha mecha shi is actually super interesting because it highlights that this construction is not just like a random combination of a loanword and a Japanese adjectival end form, but actually mirrors a lot of repetitious words that appear in Japanese adjectives. And indeed, this kind of like repetition equals more, or repetition creates a new meaning, is something that's found throughout a whole number of Asian languages. There's a term for it, but I can't remember it, embarrassingly, and I gotta run soon, so I'll just pop it on the screen. But yeah, it's like a recognized thing. And it shows that this mecha mecha shi is in a lot of ways kind of building on what has come before within the Japanese language, as terms get repeated to add some kind of extra meaning to create these adjectives. And look, this isn't like mind-blowing or anything like that, but it's always cool when a dictionary, which is basically a dumping ground of weird internet content and otaku fandom lore, comes up with a very interesting insight into how these quote-unquote weird words or slang words are actually continuing a long process of what's been happening in Japanese for a long time. In fact, probably before there was a single mecha mecha shi thing that existed throughout the landmass we now know as Japan. The end.